And we are live. Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Soul Survivor podcast. Ron and I are back to recap episode 8 of Survivor 47. What's up, Ryan?
Dylan, I'm doing great. Great episode. Anytime you give me the auction and you also give me a player's revenge arc and a blind side, I'm always going to think it was a great week. So looking forward to talking about it.
Yeah, there's so much to talk about. I can't wait. Like you said, always so exciting with the auction. I literally get chills like every time they bring the auction back. I'm like, here we go. Well, let me just get this out of the way first. Have you seen the margarita curse that has been surfacing around Twitter, Instagram, wherever you consume your Survivor content? It's pretty crazy.
Listen, Mike Bloom said, I mean, if I had a nickel for every time a player or a nurse in the new era has gotten a margarita, gotten voted out, I'd have 2 nickels, which isn't a lot, but it's crazy that it's happened twice. So crazy.
So I believe I could be wrong on this, but I believe it's actually happened 4 times in a row. Okay. Season 30 was the last time there was an auction before like 45, I think. And I believe Jen was voted out that episode with a margarita. And then there was one more before that. So this has happened 4 times, 3 in a row, which is pretty insane. Sierra goes home this episode after having the margarita curse. But so much to talk about this episode. A classic split vote at Tribal. And like you mentioned, the Andy revenge arc that we saw coming for so long now. And we finally got it. Now, I just have, a few points that I wanted to make first. I was so wrong on this podcast last week. Me and you, we've been predicting this Andy revenge arc for a long time at this point. And, I consistently told you, Andy's going to vote out Sam. Andy's going to vote out Sam. And I said to you last week, I said, I really don't think Sierra is going to be first because I feel like Sam, we've kind of gotten all we need to see with him. I feel like we've seen a lot of him. And I feel like, we were mostly shown Andy and Sam's relationship, not as much Andy and Sierra. So while we obviously know that, voting out Sierra is weakening Sam, I would say probably 10 seasons ago, this vote goes for Sam and not Sierra. But I think that the idea of what a threat is in this game has shifted so dramatically in the new era, and Sierra ends up going home first. They're really starting to target social games over like the stereotypical big threat archetypes. And that's what we saw here with Sierra going home. Andy does get his revenge, and first it comes with Sierra.
Yeah, I mean, like you look at the new era winners. I mean, you're looking at Erica and Marianne, Gabler and Jam and Dee and Kenzie. I mean, to be fair, they didn't see Kenzie win, but you're right. All these social players are making it to the end, if not winning. So their perception of who they need to get out is, shifting. But also this is not also completely new. I mean, we've seen this back in even Panama when Cirie famously was like, yeah, I'm going to get Courtney out because everybody wants to take Courtney to the end. That's one less spot for me. So you want to get out social players, but if you know that there's going to be some types of players that are going to take away one of your 3 seats at the end there, you got to get them out because that's one less spot for you, honestly. So, and I think like in the new era, we've seen a lot of this where, the guy stays, Sam is going to be a meat shield for some people, and we'll get into the vote and everything. But it also was like Andy just wanted a revenge on Sam and Sierra because they really were, to his perspective at least, they were dragging him along and they kind of saw him as their goat, and Andy wanted to kind of, shake that. And it was a lot of conflicting, opinions from especially, the former Red Tribe about who they wanted to get out, Sam versus Sierra versus Rachel. So I'm excited to kind of break it all down.
Yeah. And we saw complete chaos with this vote in terms of when they were strategizing. It was between 3 players, it seemed, that all people that were voting on the same side wanted different targets, right? It was like Teeny wanted to keep Sierra. That doesn't happen, obviously. Genevieve and Caroline wanted to target Rachel. That doesn't happen, obviously. Then, you had, obviously, people wanted to target Sierra because she's gone. Whereas Teeny wanted to target Sam, as I just said. So there was just so much going on. Eventually, Andy kind of, I think, gets what he wants, and Andy wanted Sierra to go home. she goes home. There's just it was so interesting to see because I wonder, like, going forward, right? Is Andy going to be now immediately seen as like the guy who pulled this off? Is he going to be seen as like a threat for making this move? I, for some reason, don't really get that vibe, right? I feel like he made the move. While I do think it was too soon for him to make the move, which we could get into, I don't really get the vibe that he's going to be like somebody who's like a threat for strategy, but more so like people are going to see him as like an agent of chaos instead, which is super interesting here. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I mean, the only people that Andy was not, I mean, the only two people that were out of the vote, obviously, other than Sierra, was Rachel and Sam. And the thing is that Sam and Rachel know for a fact that Andy betrayed them because there's only one vote for Gabe. Every other vote was for Sam and Sierra. So the one Gabe vote was obviously Sierra because Sam couldn't vote, lost his vote, which we'll get into, and Rachel used her shot in the dark. So they know, oh crap, Andy wasn't with us. That one vote was Sierra. So from that perspective, Andy and Rachel are going to feel like they can't trust. Sorry, Sam and Rachel are going to feel like they can't trust Andy. But to your point, does the rest of the tribe think, oh, wow, this was Andy's move? I don't think so. I think even though this was kind of early for Andy to kind of take his revenge, this basically was the former blue and red tribes coming together and saying, you know what? Yellow's a scary tribe with some scary players. We got to take a shot at them. And I don't think I think like the credit for this move, because it was a group split, I don't think Andy's going to get a lot of the credits. Maybe next week when we get back from Tribal, we're going to see some people saying, yeah, Andy, he jumped on board. Andy's with us. But I don't think Andy's going to be seen as like, oh, he's the mastermind that pulled off this Sierra move. But
yeah, I kind of get the sense with him also, right? It's like he made a move, but I'm not sure how much credit he's actually going to get for this move. Even though we, from our perspective, saw it from his side.
yeah.
Let's talk a little bit about Rachel. I think this was a pretty huge episode for Rachel. Not only did she find the idol, she had the most creative shot in the dark usage that we've ever seen. She uses the shot in the dark, basically gets a read on like what the rest of the people sitting there at Tribal, like the way that they looked at her, and then decided not to play her idol based on them giving her no tells, which I thought was like super creative. We've never seen anything like that. And I do think shot in the dark, right? Jeff has been vocal about wanting to keep the shot in the dark in the game. Whereas I think a lot of the audience is like, the shot in the dark is useless. We've only seen it, for a while. We never saw it worked. Then we saw it work one time with Caleb. And even so, it's like half the players, more like 80% of the players that go home with a shot in the dark in their pocket, right? Because at the end of the day, most of the time you need your vote. In this scenario, Rachel knew that she was not in the numbers, and she said, I'm going to take my chance, use the shot in the dark now, and I'll be able to know whether to play my idol. And now the rest of the people there will never suspect that she is an idol because she used the shot in the dark instead of just playing an idol, right? So I thought that was an awesome move. That was like I think that was like the main thing highlighted here from like everybody, is everyone was in like shock at how good of a move it was. And I do think that, we are continuously hearing from Caroline and Genevieve about Rachel being the biggest threat left in the game. And she certainly does seem like she's a big threat. Now she has an idol, and she's really there strategically, it's awesome to see.
Yeah, so Stephen Fishback made some great observations on Twitter, and Rachel actually commented about her thought process. Basically, he was like, Rachel's a very smart player. She's playing a great game. He was wondering if like Rachel knew A, where the votes were going, B, play the shot in the dark to avoid voting, to kind of like also see where things were happening, and then C, to also get a read on people to see if they were sweating. And Rachel confirmed that, yes, she played a shot in the dark to get a read on where people were voting or what they were thinking. She also played a shot in the dark to kind of avoid voting a little bit, because because the problem is like she had a feeling that something was going to go wrong, but she didn't want to like betray Andy. Sorry, she wanted to betray Sam and Sierra, but she wanted to be on the right side of the vote. So I think she kind of played it safe by using it. And then she also confirmed, I did not know where the votes were going. And I think what you're saying is the shot in the dark. I think the real value that I've learned is that its real value is not using it in terms of like hoping you get safe with it, because you have a 1 in 6 shot. It's happened once. Sorry, technically twice, but Jamie didn't need it. It's happened twice, so it's been used, at least 10 times at this point. So very low odds. So I think its better use is to use it either as a bargaining chip, like we saw, Andy say to Sierra, I'll give it to you to show my sign of trust. Emily did that with Sabaya. So I think using it as a bargaining chip, or like Rachel just did, using it to gauge, do I need to use my idol? I think those are the two good uses for it. And I think players, and Jeff has always said this, when you introduce a new twist, people eventually learn how to break it and learn how to use it. I think this is the two best kind of uses for Shot in the Dark. And I could see people going forward, if they have an idol, you play the Shot in the Dark first, you see the reactions, and then you go, okay, I need to use my idol or not. The only problem was, like, obviously Rachel didn't see any shock reactions, so she knew the votes weren't on her, so she kept it. But at camp, her and Sierra were like, I feel something's wrong. The question, I think, Dylan, is should she have, sensing something was wrong, if she wasn't in danger, try to give it to Sam or Sierra? But then again, it's a 50-50 shot, and then you might waste it, and then she's a threat. So I could see why she kept it, because she knew she wasn't in danger. But obviously, she knew something was wrong, and she lost her ally in Sierra.
Yeah, I mean, here's the thing: is like, one, she could have played it for the wrong for Sam, and then she loses an idol, and like everyone knows she doesn't have an idol now, and then like that's a disaster. So it's like, is it worth? I don't think we're at the point in the game where it's like worth that type of play. Again, we were at final 11 here, right? So it's like, at this point, just hold on to the idol. Anything could happen. The game could be flipped on its head next week for all you know. When they want to target someone else. So I think that was the right thing to do, to hold on to the idol. Now, what I think is super interesting here as well is that as I was kind of saying this for a few weeks at the beginning of the season, as soon as the rest of the tribes, when they were still in 3 tribes, as soon as they all kind of assumed that Sam and Sierra were running things, it was over for them. that was it. Like, you're never shaking that. I think, when they heard that was the thing, I really think Sierra should have probably tried to break away from Sam as soon as possible. Whereas they both, were both there come merge time, and it was pretty clear to everybody that they were still working together. So that was such a big target. That was just, no one, especially when you go into a merge with such big numbers and you're looking for a target, that was unfortunately going to be a really hard kind of image or, thing to get out of people's head. It was going to be hard to shed that. Right. So, maybe it would have been the right, I know. And Sam had an idol, so this was really hard for Sierra to do. Maybe it would have been Sierra's best move to clearly, go for Andy, go with the girls at that point. But it was really hard with Sam having an idol. But I do think that, they were both Sam and Sierra, and we'll see what happens with Sam. But I do think that Sam's days are probably numbered in this game. But we'll see what happens with Sam. But I do think that the right move for them both was to kind of be able to just shed that image by voting each other out, and neither did that. So here we are.
Yeah, well, I mean, in terms of breaking away from each other, if they're allies, it's tough to kind of vote the other person out. But in terms of making it seem like you're really at odds, this goes back to her voting out Annika instead of Andy. And you're right, he had the idol, so it would have been tough. But she still, if she pulls it off, then Andy's gone. This betrayal doesn't happen. Sam is now mad at her. You go into the merge. There's some clear friction. Maybe people will think it's an act, so maybe they wouldn't have bought that they were fighting. But like, even still, that could have been better for her game. And we did the same thing last week. We did the same thing where we're like, Tiana goes out. She should have gotten rid of, probably gotten rid of Sue over TK in that moment. So we've done this a couple times this season where we look back at people betraying. Jeff has been right. This has been a whole season of betrayals. Almost every vote so far, other than the Rome votes, has been somebody really betraying somebody else, which is why we've seen so many like hurt reactions at Tribal Council. It's been a very, and people have said this online, it's been a very personal, raw season compared to like 44, where they're like, oh, good game, you got me out. So so I think that's why people have been enjoying the season, because it's been a lot of betrayal and backstabbing. And we've now gone on this podcast every week, Dylan, and saying, let's think back to when you betrayed somebody or you made this move. Probably should have went the other way. But I mean, it's going to be tough when you're in a tight duo and people have that perception, especially when that perception doesn't go away. Because we thought actually last season, people saying, oh, Banu's like, Kenzie's a threat. she's never going to shake that, and she somehow shook it. So sometimes there's a perception coming into the merge, and you're like, oh, that person's screwed, and then it just magically goes away, probably due to a good social game. And then you have a duo like Sam and Sierra, and you're like, oh, they can't shake that.
I think what could have, it's tough. Like, what could have Sierra done to avoid this? And the answer is, I saw a lot of people saying there, like a lot of people being like, oh, Sierra, this was such a terrible move by Sierra to, not give Andy the reward at the auction, which, by the way, you confirmed that, from Andy himself, you confirmed that Andy was actually, because he had $0, Andy was not allowed to be given anything at the auction, even when Sierra was picking two people. So, all right, that she couldn't control it. And everyone was like, okay, she could have kept Andy closer, which she admitted she could have. But she also, if you watched her exit press, which I did, I was curious this week, she said that like her and Andy were very close, and we didn't really see their relationship as much on camera. We kind of just saw like her version of like her making a jab at Andy here and there. That's kind of all we saw. But she said she was very close with Andy, and like it is something that she could have, like she technically, you could always keep someone closer, but she also did have a very good relationship. So it's one of those things. It's like, I feel like there's not much she could have done, in this spot to avoid getting voted out. I do think that like her and Sam could have like staged some kind of fake fight at the beginning of the merge, like you said, to like kind of make it seem like they weren't as close, but not much she could have done, in my opinion. I do think like Andy clearly did feel on the outside, so they could have managed that better. But I do think that they were probably closer than the show made it seem. So she didn't think that she had to do that.
Yeah, and I wanted to actually touch on that point because I didn't get to watch all the exit press yet. I started to do a little bit of that. I'll probably do some more this weekend and tomorrow. But basically, I did catch Sierra saying, I think in her interview with Rob, where she went up to Sam at one point, and I don't know if this was like right at the merge or like a little bit afterwards. So maybe this was like pre-Rome vote or pre this vote. But at some point, she goes to Sam, and I think she was like, I feel like we're losing Andy. So she definitely sensed that Andy was starting to drift away. And I have to, that's where I give Sierra and Sam some blame, because obviously, listen, I do think, could she have done things differently? Sure. Because I've always said that like alliance management is so key. And obviously the most famous example is like, South Pacific, the Aussies tribe obviously discounts Cochrane. They don't manage that alliance, and that loses them the whole game. And coach scoops that piece up. But you have to really manage your alliance. And Andy, whether like they were making these little jabs here and there, or the way like, he heard them talking about him, clearly they needed to manage that better. But especially, Dylan, we talked about this last week on the podcast, the biggest fumble at the goal line was Sam and Sierra allowing Andy to be the decoy vote with almost no hesitation, because they weren't even able to go back to him and be like, oh, your name was brought up, we tried to defend it, because nobody there would have said, yeah, they tried to save you. They like, we said, oh, we need a decoy for Rome, is it going to be Andy? And they're like, if you want Andy, sure. Like, so that was like the straw that broke the camel's back. Like when they didn't go to bat for him, plus all these little like jabs and stuff, he was gone. So you really need to manage your alliance members, because this could happen.
Yeah, that's for sure true that they could have done that differently. And now you look at the game right now, and you're like, if I'm Sam, I would be all in trying to get Andy out next. But the issue is that he has no numbers now, right? So he's just gonna have to figure out what everybody else wants to do and go from there. I do have a feeling going forward, like Rachel is continuously going to be brought up as a huge threat. She's not getting around that. And Kyle, I think as soon as he loses immunity now, he's in absolute trouble, because he's had the immunity necklace for 3 straight already, which is crazy. So I have a feeling those two names, maybe Sam buys himself a little bit more time, because those two I think are going to come up before him. But I think Sam's in trouble as well after this.
Yeah, you're right. Sam's saving grace is going to be because Kyle is now on like that Tyson trajectory in Tocantins, or that Joe trajectory in Cambodia and Worlds Apart, where like you have this guy, athletic, wins like the first 3 challenges in a row at the merge, and as soon as he loses, they're gone. And Kyle, listen, people seem to really like Kyle with his social game. Could he survive? He could survive, yeah. But I just think if he's already won 3 in a row, they were already talking about him this week. If he didn't win, he was going to go. And now especially they're going to keep looking at Kyle. So that's going to be Sam's saving grace. And Sam's other saving grace is going to be before everybody turned on the former Yellow Tribe. We saw earlier this episode, Teeny was going to Sierra and Rachel and being like, we need to get out Tuku. Like, the Blue Tribe is still a big threat with some big players like Gabe and Kyle and Caroline and whatnot. So Sam's got to hope that now that Andy has defected to the other people in the tribe, and now Rachel and Sam are kind of like on a little island, they've got to hope that people go, you know what? Let's not forget you still have Kyle and Gabe over here. Let's swing our attention back to the Blue Tribe. So that's what he needs to hope for. But I do agree he's in a very, very tough spot now.
I will say the Red Tribe,
Yeah.
Genevieve, Teeny, and Saul are in amazing spots right now. I mean, they are perfectly going to be playing the middle.
Yeah.
There's nobody bringing up any of their names. Literally, like, the only thing closest to like getting their names brought up is Caroline was like, "Oh, Genevieve is really good," but she didn't like bring it up. She's like, "Oh, I just realized that she's really good," which I guess is interesting to keep a note on. But also, like, none of them are being brought up. All three of them are probably going to be controlling the next few votes, and that's big time. So,
I do have a quick question.
Those three are in a really good position, in my opinion.
I do. They're in a great position. I could see them all going far. I love Saul. I love Genevieve. I love Teeny as well. Dylan, my question to you is, how are you seeing Teeny's arc? Because I see some people on Twitter saying, "Oh, Teeny is like a top 3 like edit contender. Like, Teeny's gonna could possibly win." And I feel like while I could see it, I also feel like, she could also be like, the classic, final 5, like, loved, person that goes out, or could go out like final 7. But I feel like the arc that I'm seeing is there's been a couple of times where a plan comes to Teeny. Teeny doesn't like it, but Teeny doesn't want to stand in the way of it and doesn't want to be perceived as pushing too hard. And then she loses an alliance member. And I don't know if that means her arc is going to be, she's going to finally put her foot down at one point and she's going to make sure the plan goes her way. Or if that means her arc is she just never gets that resistance happening. Because again, she loses Asia early on. She doesn't want to lose Asia, but then Asia doesn't give her a reason to keep her. And she loses that alliance member in Asia. Then she's out of the vote for the Keyshawn votes. She loses Keyshawn there. And then this week, she does not want to lose Sierra. But then, she kind of says, I don't want to go against Sol and Genevieve if they're pushing Sierra. So my question to you is, do you feel like Teeny's going to get over that hump and be like, no, I'm going to make sure this plan goes my way? Or do you feel like their whole story is going to be, you know what, I don't want to stand in the way of a plan?
I think she will. I think Teeny will for sure get over the hump. I think it's tough, right? It's like you said, Teeny has lost several alliance members at this point because of not wanting to get in the way of a plan. But at the same time, I do feel like we are seeing like the social game of Teeny, right?
Oh, yeah.
And I do think that it's been great. And if you look at it, it's tough because I think what was most interesting to me about this episode, right? We really saw that Teeny did not want to lose Sierra, but at the same time, we also saw how tight the bond was between Teeny and Sierra, right?
Yeah.
And I think, like, you know what? Like, that was pretty interesting to show. Teeny, I saw Stephen Fishback was tweeting the same thing. Like, Teeny didn't really need to be in this edit, right? Like, at the end of the day, what she wanted to happen did not happen. And like there was no need for Teeny to be in the edit like she kind of was. But at the same time, it's like Teeny and Sierra, we saw they have a really, really close bond. Does it end up meaning anything later down the road? It might not. It might mean nothing. But I do think that was interesting. That was what kind of caught my eye this episode.
And don't forget,
it was like we didn't really see that at any other point. And then, like, all of a sudden, it was like, oh, Teeny and Sierra look like they're really close, like, out of nowhere. And I was like, that's interesting. Like, I don't know.
But yeah, Teeny and the same goes for Genevieve and Saul, but they all have really great social games and people really like Teeny. I think Teeny actually, and I think, I'm pretty sure Teeny, in terms of the first 2 or 3 food rewards of the merge, I think Teeny went to all of them or maybe 2 out of 3. So Teeny's gotten to really interact with a lot of people at the merge. So that's really great for the social game. And, with Sierra being the what's the term called? Like the foreman, or like the first person on the jury, like the mayor, Ponderosa, whatever it is. Like, Sierra's going to set the tone, and Sierra setting the tone, that's great for Teeny, who they were aligned. So that's obviously, if Teeny gets to the end, that bodes very well.
Right. Yeah, and I could say like Saul's doing a great job socially as well. I mean, he has Rachel, like they're tight. I think like Genevieve, obviously we know is doing a great job. So, the Red Tribe, I think they're looking really good, the three that are left. But do you want to talk a little bit about, let's get a little bit more into the auction, because we didn't talk too much about it. And the auction, I will never complain about an auction. Never. I would like to see them just scrap the lose a vote thing, because I think it's just all it leads to is just everybody completely everyone just wants to spend their money. So because they literally need to spend their money in order not lose the vote. So to me, it's like I would just completely get rid of that whole thing. And this way you actually have bidding, because what it is the person who has the most money is just going to end up outbidding everybody and bidding all they have. And then it's just like, okay, now it's not really bidding. It's just like, all right, I have the most money, so I'm going to go now. Right. Yeah. And then it's like somebody ends up losing their vote because they have the most money. But it's like the smart move, if you have like $1,000, just be like, I'm spending $1,000 on whatever item because I don't want to lose my vote. So I think that it would be, better TV if they had just, got rid of that part. And also they're like, oh, we'll draw a rock between 5 and 15. That's a pretty big range. And I literally was saying to myself, like, I don't know if anybody counted how many it was. It was probably like 12 or 13.
12, yeah.
And that's a lot to show. So they like started like the fast edit. I was like, what if it does go to 15? Like, how are they going to edit it? And then they edited it pretty well. But I do think, I would like to see people actually bid against each other instead of having people lose their vote. But I loved the auction still. I thought I had a great time watching it. And I think watching everybody find the tubes of money is hilarious every time. Andy walking right by a full tube. Oh. That was ridiculous.
Well, again, I told you I was at a bar watching and Andy was there, and the whole crowd was like half like gasping, half laughing, just like Andy just walking past everything. Even Bruce, last time they did the auction, even Bruce found like I think 1 at the end or maybe 2 at the end. He had no money, but he found something, and Andy just kept walking past it. But again, the silver lining is with this auction rule, Andy was the one person who couldn't lose his vote because he had no money. So that was at least good for him, but I felt bad for, Andy's just been getting the classic Charlie Brown edit where just things he's getting his revenge, but just nothing seems to ever go his way with challenges at all. But no, Dylan, I agree with you. I love the auction. I'll never complain about it. I just find it hysterical how it was broken last time because like you said, once you get past the 5th item, people are going to start cashing out immediately all their money just so they don't lose their vote. And then Survivor's like, okay, we're going to have some new twists, which we love. We're going to do the cashback program, which I thought was really funny and clever, where you're going to buy an item. Oh, you get $60 back. So that's kind of a fun way to kind of put you at risk to get more money. Oh, we're also going to hide some advantages in there. We're not going to tell you, but that was fun to see the advantage hidden. We'll talk about that. And then we're also going to do something where we're going to have multiple people put up money and compete. So all great things that they did to make the auction better than 45. I just find it hysterical, like you're mentioning, where they need to have this lose vote thing where it's like it's like the classic thing where like they're setting a fire just so they can put it out, where it's like they're introducing all these new gimmicks to fix the auction because you broke it in the first place. You wouldn't have to put these new gimmicks in to fix it if you didn't break it in the first place. But I will say I like the auction. I'm happy that Jeff wants to keep doing it. Maybe not every season, but they're still going to do it. And even if they're going to make people lose a vote, at least they're trying to make it interesting. One thing I want to say before I pass it back to you, somebody had actually a really great idea on Twitter to kind of stop the whole just cashing out thing. Ari Bacher said on Twitter, in addition to Jeff doing like the number of rounds between 6 and 15, he should also draw a like a coin, like a high-low rock, which basically determines if you either have the most money at the end, you lose your vote, or the lowest money. Now, obviously, that would have screwed Andy because Andy had no money. But let's just say in a different auction, let's just say in season 49, let's say everybody has at least $80. And if Jeff draws the high-low rock, that basically is, okay, you either have the most money or the lowest money, and you could lose your vote, which then puts the actual bidding back into it, because then it's like, well, I want to spend the money, but I don't want to have the most or least. So you want to kind of like find that middle line. That could be a fun way to make it less boring, where you just keep cashing out.
Yeah, that's a super interesting idea. I'm gonna guess that we'll see if the auction's back for 48. If it's not, I'm guessing for 49 or 50
Yeah.
or whenever it comes back next. I do think I think it'll be a little bit different than what we've seen. But I'm happy it was back. I think it's a staple of Survivor, so I'd love to have it come back. Trying to think about classic immunity challenge this episode as well. We see classic Charlie training for his grip strength, and I think it's some seasons you get people who literally could turn that entire thing back with their hands.
Yeah.
Nobody this episode, nobody could do that, and they were all just dropping so easily. But what was your thoughts on having them have 2 immunity winners for this? I don't really think it was necessary, but I guess like it didn't really affect anything. Sue wins immunity for the girls, and Kyle wins immunity again for the guys. So what was your thoughts on that?
I mean, I like it. I mean, they do that, like they do it maybe like once a season or every other season. I think it's a fine twist. I mean, at least it's a fair challenge because it's not just strength, because obviously I think they once said everybody's bucket has like 25% of your body weight, which, I mean, I feel like it's one of those things on TV where you feel like, oh, it doesn't seem that hard, but you realize like, I'll just do like 25% of my body weight just to make it like an easy example. But like, if you're using your wrists to hold up like 42 pounds, like just with your wrist, like that's actually really hard. And obviously for Sam and bigger guys, it's tougher because they have to hold more weight. So that's how it evens out. But no, I think it's fine to do guys and girls. It would have been bad if it was like very uneven gender split, but it was like 6 and 5 or whatever it was. So it was pretty even. I actually called it. I was watching at the bar and I was saying to somebody, I'm like, I'm going to say Sue and Kyle just because I felt like, Kyle's going to do well at this. And I feel like Sue is just one of those rock solid people at this. And I was right with Kyle and Sue. But Andy put up a good fight. The whole crowd was like cheering for Andy when he was like trying to roll it back up. And then he just couldn't hold on. So
yeah. I like that challenge. It's a good challenge.
Oh yeah, it's a classic.
Yeah. A few more other things I wanted to point out. Just like I've been scrolling Reddit a lot for, Survivor Reddit. Somebody had a really good post that was like, it's this season, it seems like there's like a strategy off between a strategy off between Rachel, Genevieve, and Caroline that are all like consistently like I think that those 3 are probably the leaders in like strategic game right now.
Yeah.
And they've been like really, really good. Like I said, we talked about it last week. Somebody said like Caroline is the most rational person ever to play this game, the most like normal person ever to play this game. Everything she says makes perfect sense. Genevieve, we have not seen her like misstep one time in the whole game. And Rachel, she was left out of a couple votes here and there, but she has an idol and she like pulled off one of the best strategic moves we've seen potentially in the new era, like this week with the shot in the dark play, right? So it's like, we really like those 3 are really, really good strategists. And it has been really fun to watch.
And it's interesting because Caroline's got her lasers on Rachel. Like we saw many times this episode. Even like Genevieve was also like, we should go for Rachel, but Caroline in at least 2 or 3 confessionals was like, Rachel is good. Rachel has to go. And I don't think Caroline's going to let up on that anytime soon. I also wonder if that's also stemmed from last week where they were going to get out Rachel. She basically steered Tiana away from Gabe and was like focusing on Rachel. Rachel gets to get out of there with the safety without power. And now she's like, damn, Rachel escaped. And now Rachel played her shot in the dark. I feel like Caroline's going to keep honing in on Rachel. And I'm sure Genevieve is going to want to do the same. The one interesting thing I will say about last week as well, Dylan, is that, we didn't see any reaction or any like follow-up to Caroline kind of being a little bit not upset, but she was kind of like just like stone-faced or like just kind of in shock when Tiana left. And she kind of just was, I do think that was a hard decision for her to still get rid of Tiana over Gabe. And I think this week the whole story was Andy's revenge, but I'm wondering if Gabe's name comes up again, whether it's like final, 9 or 8 or whatever. I wonder if we're going to see Caroline be like, do I want to continue to stick my neck out for Gabe, or at some point does Gabe have to go? So we didn't see that at all this week because it wasn't part of the narrative, but I find it interesting that we didn't have any follow-up to that from last week.
Yeah, we still have 10 players left, and it looks like that Rachel's probably going to be the top target. Kyle, we know, is probably going to be the top target, but I can't imagine Gabe has too much longer after that if that's kind of how this goes. Gabe is one of those guys, and you mentioned this to me that you kind of feel like Gabe's exit in this game is going to be like a Dodo edit at some point. Like he's gonna get that type of edit on the way out, kind of like a Rome did. He's one of those players that I think in his mind he thinks he's controlling the game right now. I think he thinks he's controlling the game. He continuously tells us like basically like everyone's like, oh, he's talking about using players as pawns, right? That he thinks he's controlling the game, and there is like not one thing that I look at and I'm like, he's controlling. Like that's the type of thing. He's just his like vision of where the game is so off from the rest of the people there.
Yeah.
I think that Gabe probably out of everybody left has one of the least chances to win out of everybody. I just cannot see how he kind of maybe he gets his footing, but he seems like so almost delusional in some cases here. So we'll see.
Yeah. Well, I agree in one sense. I do agree. Like if we're looking at the edits, I think out of the 10 people left, he clearly has one of the least chances to win. I mean, could he still win? Okay, sure. I'll always go back to Gabler. If Gabler can win, anybody can win. But like Gabe has one of the smallest chances to win, but it's possible. And I do think the edit is painting him in that way where he's like, oh, I'm controlling these people. I'm giving like the Jim Halpert look at the camera. Like he's clearly being shown very confident. I'll give him credit though. I do think he has set his pieces up well because he was the one who went to Sue on like day one. I was like, I want to align with you. And clearly that's paid dividends because Caroline was not making that move last week without Sue. And Sue has, from what we've heard in Exit Press and also like on the show, Sue seems very loyal to Gabe. So that's really paid out for him. And, Caroline, even though she's, flirted with the idea of getting rid of Gabe, hasn't happened yet. So he has set himself up with those pieces. Again, whether he's fully in control, I don't think so, but he definitely has some layer of protection a little bit. And also Sue has her idol. And I feel like if Gabe next week ends up being the name, let's just say Kyle wins again, Gabe's the name. Gabe doesn't know Sue has the idol, but I could see Sue, if she finds out Gabe's in danger, I could see her using it on him.
Yeah, I could see that. And you know what? I think you do make a good point. Like him setting himself up with Sue was really good. I just think like he thinks that he's driving votes right now, and I don't think he is. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. I don't really see it with him. One other thing I guess to mention. I don't have too much more. I think we recapped most of what we need to. One thing that I kind of did the math and brought up to you. The finale is December 18th, which means that. And I saw some theories on Reddit floating around that I don't believe at all. But, we do not need a double boot this season because we have an extra episode, right? Maybe they still will do a double boot at some point, but I doubt it because if you do the math right now, next week we're going to have 10 left in the game. The week after, so that next week's episode will be on, what's Wednesday's date?
13.
The 13th. So the 13th, there'll be 10 people left. November 20th, there will be 9 people left. November 27th, there will be 8 people left. December 4th, there will be 7 people left. December 11th, there will be 6 people left. And then December 18th, final 5 finale, right? Yeah. So it seems like it does line up correctly. I did see some people theorizing like, well, maybe the extra episode means that the finale will only be 4 people. Maybe there'll be a final 2 this time and not a final 3. I could tell you there's no way. I highly doubt that. But that was a funny theory that was floating around. But just interesting to note that it seems like, we're so late to have 10 people left, but I guess they added an extra episode, so it does make sense. But if you do the math like that there are still 10 people left. So
yeah, I think the simplest explanation is that it's just an extra episode. I think we're going to get to, like you said, each week down one person, no double boot, and then just the final 5 on finale night, which is December 18th. And then we get the final 3. I mean, we haven't seen a final 2 in many years. They're not going to bring it back. And then the one time we thought they were going to bring it back in Code Wrong, they did the whole vote out a juror. So I don't think we're going to get a final 2 back. I mean, I feel like we always have a double boot, but maybe they just chose not to this season.
Yeah, maybe not. Yeah, not too much left. I would say other than that, Yeah, I really like Sierra, so sad to see her go. I do think that she's one of those players that had a lot of potential and kind of found herself early in the game in like a unfortunate situation that she couldn't really get out of. We didn't like see too much of her. We've seen more of Sam's story, not Sierra, but we will see. We'll get to see a lot of her on the jury. So
I also like Sierra. I thought she had potential as well. It's really eerie because I know we made the Kelly comparison with the whole. She also had the margarita. Kelly was also a nurse. So there were some comparisons there, but the scary comparison that I saw, and this is going to be a deep cut because people are not going to remember this, in season 35, which is Triple H. People probably don't remember Jessica, but Jessica goes out at the merge, and Jessica, also a nurse, very similar to Sierra, where they both get into an alliance with the bigger guy, Jessica with Cole and Sarah with Sam. And they both of them seem to be doing very well in the pre-merge. They get to the merge, but then the group targets, Jessica as she's probably the bigger social threat. Same thing goes for Sierra. A lot of very interesting comparisons, both Purple Merge Tribe. Very just weird, eerie coincidences between Jessica from Triple H and Sierra.
Yeah, that is pretty funny. Anything else you want to add, Ryan, before we?
Not much. I think we covered most of the strategy, and the Red Tribe, Teeny, Sol, and Genevieve kind of now being in a good driver's seat because the war between the war between Blue and Yellow are going to keep continuing, and I think they're in a really good spot. No one's saying their names. We went over that. I think we just talked about next week who's the most likely in danger. I think Sam obviously is in danger. Rachel's name's going to be brought up, and obviously Kyle if he loses, and Gabe. I think those are the 4 names right now that are in the most danger: Sam, Rachel, Gabe, and Kyle. Other than that, I just thought it was a fun episode. I think the auction just added a lot of fun. I mean, it was a good chunk of the episode, but it just makes it. I mean, Dylan, think about what other moments we had beyond the betting and the advantages. We had Kyle being a vegetarian, and then he's like, "I'm gonna eat the chicken wings because I'm starving out here." Gabe spends all his money and gets a coconut. And I, by the way, I would be so pissed if I was starving.
A coconut filled with water.
So I would be so livid if I spent like $600 my whole budget on a coconut, which is why scared money makes no money, but I feel like I would only want to bet on what Jeff reveals because I would really hate to just waste my money. And then Caroline eating the fish eyes, and then Sam, Sue, and Caroline eating those grubs to win the breakfast, which, by the way, I was watching with some Survivor fans. Listen, these people are crazy. I'm just going to say these people are crazy because I am a fan. You're a fan. I think we know the show very well. And I've always said to you, my worst challenge would be a food eating challenge. Could never do it.
I would tap out immediately. There would be no reason for me to attempt it. And I think here's the thing. And in Sierra's exit press, she said, I knew Sam was going to eat it in 2 seconds. So there was not even a point of me trying it. Plus, she'd already ate. Who were the 2? Was it Caroline and Sue also went for it with Sam?
Yeah.
I mean, did they really think they were going to beat Sam in that contest? I not worth it.
But that's what I said. I was watching and I said to people, I was like, oh, I would tap out. And they're like, you're a fan. You're crazy. You wouldn't even try. I'm like, the reason I'm going to tap out is because A, I don't want to do it. But B, I know I'm not going to win. Because no matter what happens in a food challenge or in an auction in this moment, it's going to be at the end of race. And I'm not going to win a race. If I get something down, it's going to be slow and at my own pace. I'm not going to come in first. So why even, like you just said, why even attempt it if Sierra's like, Sam's going to win this? And above all else, Dylan, above all else, let's just say I didn't want to embarrass myself on TV and I had to try. It's going to be something that's dead. I am not putting anything alive.
Insane, yeah.
No. If it's like a fisheye or a pig snout, like if it's not a living thing, not alive, I will, like you said, I would tap out no matter what, but I would consider it just so like my friends and family would be like, at least like you gave it a shot. If it's alive, I'm not even attempting it. Not even a shot.
Yeah. I'm not even gonna win a food competition if we're eating pizza. So if we're eating bugs and stuff, I'm not winning. I'm not winning anything. But yeah,
no. But it was fun. I think the auction provides a lot of fun moments. I hope, like you said, if they bring it back in 49 or 50, I think they're going to skip next season. I think they're doing like in every other thing. I would hope they continue to do this thing where they, throw in more twists, try to make it more fun, just so that way it's not just like people immediately cashing out.
I hope. Yeah, I think that is what probably will happen. So.
Oh, and the one last thing I want to mention, just again, as we always do our advantage tally. So the only advantages in the game is Sue still has her idol, and Rachel has an idol. That's it, right?
Yes.
Hey, not bad. Not bad.
I do think there's going to be a non-idol advantage that gets probably pushed into the game soon because it feels like there should be. So I will see.
Listen, I'm never one to complain about few advantages. So the fact that there's only 2 idols is good. I think production didn't anticipate people just blowing the amulets immediately. I think they anticipated people like kind of keeping the amulets, like with Austin and with 40, what they happened in 45. Right. So I think when that kind of immediately got knocked out, they're like, oh, okay. But I'm happy with 2 idols, so it's good.
Yep, agreed here. All right, I think that's all we got for today. We'll be back next week, probably Sunday, to recap episode 9. Excited for the rest of the season.
Yeah, Dylan, we always say it, but season has been very consistent, and I think it's been getting better and better, so I'm excited to see where we go next.
Yep.
As always, grab your torches and head back to camp.
Good night.